Ladies and gentlemen, we've officially entered finale territory, which is so crazy. I feel like the show just started, but we've officially entered finale territory for The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. And instead of doing another sort of review at the moment for how I think the episodes have been, I'm instead going to focus on what I think is going to happen in this final episode, because if we're being frank, I really do not see how this is going to end in one more episode. So I wanted to talk about this because I think instead of doing a finale, they're going to close off a lot of the Rick and Michonne stuff, but still keep the universe open. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but it's exactly what I wanted to talk about in this video. So let's jump right in. Episode 5 left us off on a pretty somber and also pretty crazy note. We've seen a lot of conclusions and answers to a lot of the things that we've set out to see in The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live so far, whether it's the reunion of Rick and Michonne, finding out where Rick's been, finding out where Michonne's been, what's up with Jadis, and even having surprise things along the way, like things like the Echelon briefing, which I'm sure we're going to get into in episode 6, as well as the CRM and other details. I feel like for the most part, they've done a pretty amazing job at satisfying us with answers to those questions, albeit the pacing itself has its own set of issues, which we are going to get into in the series review eventually. But with all those things said, I think they've already done a good job of answering a lot of questions. And at this moment, there's only a few questions that I have left to answer. 1, how do they escape? 2, will they make it back to Alexandria? 3, what's the Echelon briefing? And 4, what are the fates of a lot of the characters that we've seen? There may be some others in there, but those are the biggest, by far the biggest ones. And this finale, realistically speaking, has a lot to do if it wants to live up to what I think could be a very satisfying show. Time will tell. We're going to find out on Easter Sunday, which is crazy. Also, I don't know why they're releasing this episode on Easter Sunday. That might screw me up, guys. I'm just letting you know. I have, family plans and things like that day. I have no idea how that's going to impact my ability to create content for this show. Speaking of, really quickly, I have to make a quick table for this. I have to announce to you guys, I've been having a ton of issues on Jerry's Reacts getting those videos out for copyright purposes. So there is no episode 5 reaction. I promise you guys I tried to get it done, but every time I did, I was running into copyright issues, and it's just at this point, I don't know what else to do. It's taking up a lot of my personal time, so I'm tabling this one, hoping for the best for the next one, and then honestly, if I'm being real, I might reconsider the whole reaction channel thing. We'll get into that in another video later, but let's get back to the main topic at hand, okay? The way that episode 5 ended off, we have a lot to see with the return of Rick and Michonne to the CRM. Obviously, they have to go back and destroy the dossier, but we also know there's a summit coming up. We also know that Rick was going to get the Echelon briefing. So naturally, the story has to go there. And I don't want to really get into trailers too much in this video, but if you're looking at the trailers alone, we have already seen that Michonne somehow gets into like the theater or whatever it is to see something. Whether that is the Echelon briefing or not, time will tell. But I do genuinely find it interesting that we've already seen that. So I'm wondering if what they're going to do is essentially go back to the CRM, try to destroy the dossier, then Thorne somehow gets involved, causes issues, because at some point, somehow, Michonne has to get her armor. I don't know how else they are going to show that in what is probably an hour-long episode, while also having to do a lot of other things. So what I think this is going to be is a lot of that. And then we've also heard people who have seen the episode say that this is a tearjerker, get ready to cry, there's a very big thing that happens, which leads me to think one of the characters may not make it out of this. And I think that's a very divisive point for a lot of people, but I do think overall, pacing aside, and again, that's, if you guys haven't been able to pick up already, my biggest issue going into the review is pacing. I think realistically, that's one of the biggest problems I have with this show, outside of everything else, in my opinion, being very strong. So I really did like it. so far, at least. I mean, this episode's going to really be the telling factor, but when we get into the full review, you'll see that pacing is probably one of my biggest things. But regardless, they have a lot to do with that whole CRM thing. Michonne is going to be there to see that speech at the summit. Rick is probably going to get the echelon briefing. I don't think they would be talking about it this much in the story if we weren't going to see that in one way, shape, or form. But on top of all that, that's like an A plot. We have the whole B plot of them somehow getting back to Alexandria. And I don't know if this makes sense, but the whole Father Gabriel thing at the beginning of the episode of episode 5 didn't seem like it fit in the timelines of the whole Anne storyline, which makes me think that perhaps that has something to do with helicopters going to or from Alexandria. Time will tell. I don't know, but I don't think this finale will satisfy me personally unless we have some sort of sense of going home to Alexandria and a form of reunion. Do I think we're going to get exactly what we want, which is a reunion between Daryl, Carol, Maggie, Negan, all of them? No. I honestly don't. I don't think that's happening. I think they are going to save that. And as much as I don't want to admit it, because I'm not a fan of all of these spin-offs and all of that stuff, this is a business. This is a product. It's the hottest product AMC has to offer. There's absolutely going to be more spin-offs, and there's just no way on earth, whether they do a season 2 of The Ones Who Live or they tie the story into other spin-offs, there is no way on earth that this entire universe of CRM and blah, blah, blah gets wrapped up in one episode. It is physically impossible. If they even try to do something like that, I think it's going to be a flop. I don't know how they could physically do that. With an army that strong, it's not like Rick and Michonne are going to be the ones to end it all. That's not happening. They're probably not going to be doing something like what happens in the comics with Rick, at least in this one episode. They haven't had any time to really build that up and make that a believable situation. So really, again, what I'm expecting is to get a lot of the answers of the dossier thing. I'm expecting them to get the echelon briefing. Maybe, if anything, at the summit, they're going to kill everyone there. Like I said in my last video, I think they might do a Shoshana sort of thing like Inglourious Bastards, where if you guys haven't seen, it's an old movie, so I feel like if you don't want to see this, I'll put timestamps of where you can skip to. But in Inglourious Bastards, Shoshana, who was one of the Jewish people that was hunted by whatever his name is, Hans Landa, I think his name is, whatever. She gets everyone in the movie theater and burns the movie theater down with all of the top-ranking Nazi people in it. I kind of feel like that's the exact sort of story we're going to be getting in The Ones Who Lives finale. And the reason I think that specifically is the promo material. One, how much they're talking about this summit. 2, and number 3, Rick's dreams with the crops and burning it down to start something new. I think with all those pieces at play, and when I say the promo material, I mean all the fire and stuff like that, they have a really big emphasis on fire in everything we've seen so far. Rick has dreams about fire, and sometimes you need a fire to bring a good situation. He's already said that. And we have a summit. Naturally, I think that means we're going to get something like a Shoshana-style thing where they're going to burn down the theater or something like that. Time will tell. We really have no idea, no clue how this is going to play out. I just really genuinely hope that the pacing is strong and it feels believable. I think so far they've done a very good job of doing that, but also they haven't in some ways, so I don't know. But that's one part. Then the other part is somehow getting back home. I don't really necessarily care to see like a flash forward or a flashback of like Carl or whatever, as long as if it's thematically appropriate, that would be amazing and it would be cool to see. But I don't think they should be wasting time with dream sequences in this episode. I think they need a really, really strong, focused goal in this episode, which ends ultimately with either one of them dying, both of them coming back, or something like that. Ultimately, I think it would make for really good storytelling, personally, if Michonne were to die and Rick came back to Alexandria with Michonne, like, in his arms or with him, but he came back and it was a great surprise to the community, but a great tragedy because she was lost on the way. You know what I mean? I think that's beautiful storytelling. Do I think it's going to happen? I honestly don't know. I really do genuinely think, like I said, these things are products and businesses, and if they kill off Michonne and Rick, it's going to really fracture the franchise, which sucks because this is a show about The Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Like, this is a show where people die. That's what made the show so strong and so significant. Sometimes you need that in a story for, to push the story forward. I know it's a lot harder when these characters are so well propped up and all of that stuff. And to me, that makes perfect sense. Like, I do understand that, but also it would make for amazing storytelling. I don't really want them to die, but I do think it would make for a really good story. And we all know that Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrera are both seemingly not interested in pursuing The Walking Dead much further. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they love the show, they have good chemistry, blah, 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 but these are actors. No actor wants to stay in the same character forever. It's just totally unreasonable to think that they're going to. So to me, I think it would make for good storytelling if one of them dies. Do I really want that? No, but also I think it would serve the story well and give it a proper conclusion that it needs. In a perfect world, they both reunite, go home to their kids. But remember, this is The Walking Dead. Like, this is a show that's always had tragedy in it to tell beautiful stories. And with that, I think they're going to do something like that. We will see. I just hope, like, for me, if this show were to be successful, like, this is the episode where we figure out if the show worked or not. I'm not even considering the possibility of a season 2. I'm just not, because we were promised a limited series of 6 episodes. So I'm taking that at face value. I understand they are probably going to build some of these stories into other shows and other world building things for The Walking Dead, and that's fine. But I'm taking this at face value that this is going to be a 6-episode miniseries. And for it to be a successful 6-episode miniseries, I think we need to see the return of Rick to Alexandria. I really do. Or at least proof to Alexandrians that he was alive this whole time in some way, shape, or form. So we need to see that, as long as some form of reunion with a lot of the people. Like, we already saw Father G. I think that means we're going to be seeing more. I think we need some sort of sound conclusion to the entire CRM debacle that they're in right now. So that's 3 in terms of, I think they need to get themselves out of this messy situation. And number 4, I think they need to make it feel good without really rushed pacing. If they check off those 4 things, I think the show will easily be one of my favorites that I've ever seen. Yes, I didn't like episode 5, and I told you guys I was going to make a video reviewing episode 5 again, but honestly, my opinion has stayed the same pretty much the whole time. Honestly, if you want to see a really good video about how I do feel, The Walking David's review of episode 5 sums it up literally perfectly, to the point where there's nothing more I could say to what he said. I agree completely with him. Regardless, even though I didn't like episode 5, I could still acknowledge the fact that every other episode to me was constant banger. Episode 1 was my favorite episode of The Walking Dead. Episode 2 was my favorite episode of The Walking Dead. Episode 3 was my favorite episode of The Walking Dead. Episode 4 was my favorite episode of The Walking Dead. And then episode 5 was like a regular Walking Dead episode. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about the show. I think it's done so well, even with pacing issues and some poor writing decisions. I think it is a very entertaining, fun show to watch. I'm glad it exists, but if they don't wrap it up in a sound way, I think that's going to ruin it for me. Time will tell. We will know on Easter Sunday, but I want to hear your predictions down below. Do you think it's going to go in some of the ways that I thought? Do you think it's going to go in different ways? What do you want to see? What will make you think this show was a great show? You know what I mean? Like, what is that? Let me know down in the comments. And with that all out of the way, thank you again so much for watching this video. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.